He laughed as he handed me divorce papers in labor, unaware of the will that changed everything. Pathetic woman. You can't even give birth without screaming like a failure. Sign the papers now. I want nothing to do with you, or that child. Those were the hateful words he spat as he shoved divorce papers into her trembling hands while she lay in labor, fighting for her life and the life of their baby. Her pain was his entertainment. Her tears, his triumph. Her love, nothing more than a burden he was eager to discard. But fate has a way of turning cruelty into chains. That moment meant to destroy her would one day become the key to his downfall. This is the story of a woman humiliated at her weakest hour, mocked by the man she trusted most, and the shocking twist that no one, not even him, could have imagined. And today, it is being retold by me. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in the cold silence of the guest room. The one Daniel said she should start sleeping in, for her comfort. But comfort was the last thing she felt. Her body ached. Her baby shifted restlessly inside her. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The image of Daniel and Vivian in each other's arms replayed in her mind like a cruel movie stuck on loop. She hadn't spoken to either of them since she saw the truth with her own eyes. She didn't know what to say. What could she say? Her heart was shattered, but her body still had to hold itself together for the child inside her. She couldn't fall apart. Not yet. The next morning, she gathered every ounce of strength she had and walked downstairs. Vivian and Daniel were in the kitchen. Vivian was sipping coffee. Daniel scrolled through his phone like nothing had happened. Emily stood in the doorway, barely able to breathe. "I saw you," she said, her voice quiet but shaking. "Last night, I saw everything Daniel didn't even look up." Vivian turned, feigning shock. "Emily, I don't know what you think you saw, but—" "Don't!" Emily snapped. Her hands clenched at her sides. "Don't lie to me!" Vivian stood and stepped closer, voice gentle. "Emily, you're under a lot of stress. You're pregnant. Hormones can make things feel exaggerated." Emily blinked at her. "You were kissing my husband." Vivian tilted her head. "Were we? Or are you misinterpreting something out of fear?" "I heard him," Emily whispered. "He said I wasn't supposed to see it yet." Daniel finally looked up, his eyes cold and lifeless. "Well, you did," he said flatly. "So now you know." Emily's knees buckled slightly. She caught herself on the edge of the counter. "Why?" she asked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Why would you do this to me?" Daniel smirked. "Because I could." Vivian placed a hand on Emily's arm like she was comforting her. "He doesn't want to hurt you anymore. That's why you should just sign the papers." Emily stared at her. "What papers?" Vivian gave a fake little laugh, then leaned in and whispered close to her ear. "The divorce papers. He doesn't want you anymore." That night, Judith came by. Emily was curled up on the couch, hugging a pillow like it could protect her. Judith sat across from her, legs crossed, smiling too politely. "I heard things got emotional this morning," Judith said. Emily said nothing. Judith leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Emily, you've embarrassed yourself enough." "Everyone sees it. The crying, the desperation. It's not becoming I'm his wife," Emily said, her voice breaking. Judith's smile disappeared. "Not for much longer." Emily's lip trembled. "I've loved him." "And he doesn't love you," Judith replied, sharp as a knife. "That should tell you something. If you really cared about that baby, you'd walk away before you ruin her life too." Emily's eyes widened. "How dare you?" Judith stood. "Think about what kind of mother you want to be." The one who begs and clings? Or the one who knows when she's lost? She walked out without saying goodbye. Emily barely slept. She tossed and turned in bed, clutching her belly as sharp cramps shot through her side. Her head pounded. Her chest was tight. Around 4 a.m., she gasped. Her water broke. Panic set in. She stumbled to the phone and called the driver. Within minutes, she was on the way to the hospital, alone. She cried quietly in the back seat, gripping her phone, waiting, hoping Daniel would call. He didn't. By the time she was in the hospital bed, the contractions were coming hard and fast. Her back arched in pain. Nurses rushed around her. She was drenched in sweat, shaking, alone. Then the door opened. Daniel walked in dressed in a crisp suit. Emily's eyes lit up briefly, stupidly. Daniel! Without a word, he walked to the side of her bed and dropped a thick envelope onto her chest. She looked down at it. Divorce papers. Sign them, he said, voice flat. Emily stared at him, stunned. Right now? You're already on your back, he said. Might as well get it done. Her face crumpled. Please, Daniel. Why are you doing this? His eyes narrowed. Because you disgust me, you whine, you cry, you're needy and weak, and I can't stand to look at you anymore. Tears streamed down her cheeks. A nurse stepped in, but Daniel turned and waved her off like a nuisance. He leaned in close. You can't even give birth without screaming like a failure. Just sign the damn papers. I want nothing to do with you, or that child. Emily's hand trembled as she opened the folder. Vivian appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, smiling like she'd just won a prize. Emily looked from Daniel to Vivian. Her heart was screaming, her body tearing apart with pain, her soul already crushed. But she signed. With a shaking hand and a shattered spirit, she signed. Emily's signature was shaky, barely legible. The pen slipped from her fingers and rolled to the floor. Her hand dropped to her side, lifeless. She could barely breathe. The pain in her abdomen was getting sharper now, deeper. But it was nothing compared to what Daniel had just done. He took the signed papers without saying a word. No thank you, no goodbye, no glance at the woman carrying his child. He just turned, straightened his cufflinks, and walked out of the room. Emily's mouth parted in disbelief. He left, just like that. Vivian lingered in the doorway. She slowly stepped inside, her heels clicking like tiny hammers on cold tile. You did the right thing, she said softly, brushing imaginary lint from her designer blazer. Daniel needs peace in his life. You weren't that Emily lay there, panting, writhing, clutching her belly. She was too weak to argue, too broken to cry anymore. Vivian looked at her with a tilted head, as if observing a wounded animal. Then she smiled. Not sweet, not kind, just pleased. I'll take good care of him, she added. Not that he ever needed much. Emily turned her face away, tears sliding silently into the pillow. She wanted to scream, to curse, to tear something apart. But all she could do was survive the next contraction. Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper as she turned to leave. You lost, Emily. Some women were never meant to win. The nurses returned. They found Emily hyperventilating, her body tense with pain. We're going to get you through this, one of them said, gripping her hand. Just breathe. But it wasn't just labor. It was heartbreak. It was humiliation. It was the feeling of everything inside her being ripped out. Not just the child, but the last pieces of who she thought she was. Hours passed. The sun began to rise through the hospital blinds. Emily screamed as the final push came. Sweat dripped from her forehead. Her throat felt raw from crying out. There was no husband holding her hand, no mother-in-law in the waiting room, no family, no one, except the child she was about to meet. And then, at last, the cry. A nurse placed the small, wriggling newborn on Emily's chest. Her skin was red and soft. Her cry filled the room like music. Emily broke. The tears came fast and full this time, shaking her whole body. But it wasn't just pain anymore. It was release. It was grief and love and disbelief, all crashing at once. The nurse smiled down at her. "It's a girl." Emily ran her fingers gently along the baby's cheek. "Hope," she whispered. Her daughter's name. The only thing that made sense in a world that had collapsed. Later, as Emily rested, a shadow appeared at the door again. Vivian. She wasn't smiling this time. She looked victorious. She walked in without asking and stood beside the crib. "I just wanted to see her once," she said, voice quiet. Emily didn't respond. Vivian looked down at the sleeping baby. "She looks nothing like Daniel." Maybe that's a blessing. Emily glared at her. "You don't belong here." Vivian turned her head slowly. "No, but neither did you," she said, her voice laced with venom. Then she looked back at the baby. "She'll never know her father didn't want her." "That's probably for the best." Emily sat up as much as her body would allow. "Get out." Vivian raised her hands. "Fine. Enjoy your little moment." She paused in the doorway. "You'll be alone in the end," she added. "People like you always are." When the room was finally quiet again, Emily held her daughter close. She stared at her tiny face, her soft lashes, her perfect little hands. The world was cruel, but in her arms she held something pure, someone worth fighting for, and though her body was weak, her heart, slowly, began to harden, not in bitterness, but in purpose. The news hit the internet like wildfire. CEO Daniel Carter finalizes divorce from ex-wife amid cheating scandal. Sources say baby may not be his. Carter family breaks. Silence. We support. Daniel's healing and new chapter. Emily's name was everywhere. Not in sympathy, not in support, in shame. Daniel's team had painted her as unstable, disloyal, and dangerous. Every article carried twisted quotes and blurry photos taken on her worst days. One showed her leaving a clinic with her newborn, looking exhausted and pale. The caption read, "Emily Carter, ex-wife, seen postnatal and erratic per witness." She couldn't stop reading them. She hated herself for it, but the need to see how far they'd dragged her kept pulling her back. There were no calls from friends. No messages of support. People believed the headlines. Why wouldn't they? Daniel had the money, the power, the public voice. She had none of it. 3 months after the divorce, a glossy magazine cover appeared at every grocery store checkout. New love, new life, Daniel Carter and Vivian Hart officially engaged. Front and center was a photo of Vivian, radiant in a white gown, flashing a diamond ring. Daniel stood behind her, arm wrapped around her waist, smug as ever. Emily stared at it for a long time before turning away and leaving her groceries behind. She didn't have the money anyway. Judith Carter made things worse. She gave a televised interview at a charity gala, arm in arm with Vivian, and said, "Vivian has brought peace back to our family. She's everything a Carter woman should be, graceful, driven, loyal." When the reporter asked about Emily, Judith tilted her head and gave a slight smile. "We don't discuss irrelevant people." Emily watched it all from her tiny apartment, a one-bedroom rental that smelled like peeling paint and second-hand smoke. The fridge buzzed louder than the TV. The baby crib sat right beside her mattress on the floor. Hope had just turned 3 months. Emily held her while feeding, brushing soft hair from her daughter's forehead. Her little eyes blinked up at her, full of innocence. Emily whispered, "I'm so sorry, baby. I should have been stronger." Her bank account was nearly empty. Her last job interview had ended with the manager saying, "We're not sure someone with your background fits the brand." The judgment followed her everywhere. That night, unable to sleep, Emily reached into her old purse and pulled out a wrinkled letter, the one her grandfather had written. She unfolded it slowly. Her fingers trembled. "Emily, if anything happens to me, go see Mr. Holden. He has something that belongs to you. Something important. I didn't want anyone else near it. Not your husband, not even your friends. Trust your instincts. You'll know when it's time. She read it 3 times before grabbing her phone and searching for the name. Holden and West, estate law, retired. There was a number listed. She called it without thinking. To her surprise, someone answered. Holden Residence, an older voice said. Hi, this is Emily Carter. Well, Emily Brooks. My grandfather was Henry Brooks. He told me to contact you. There was a long pause. Then, come tomorrow. Bring ID. Bring the child. The next morning, she dressed Hope in her cleanest onesie and wore her only decent blouse. The bus ride was long, and the walk from the station was longer. But she made it to the address. A small house tucked behind a line of hedges. Not a law office, just a quiet, unassuming place. A tall, thin man in his 70s opened the door. You look just like your mother, he said. Emily blinked. You're Mr. Holden. He nodded. Come in. Inside, the man led her to a study lined with dusty bookshelves. He pulled out a locked metal box, opened it with a key, and handed her a stack of sealed envelopes and a folder. Your grandfather left strict instructions, he said. None of this was to be shared until after his death, and only if you came in person with your child. Emily opened the top envelope and pulled out the will. Her eyes scanned the page, and then widened. It stated clearly, all assets, properties and holdings owned by Henry Brooks are to be passed to my granddaughter, Emily Brooks, upon the verified birth of her first child. The child shall be named legal heir. Emily shall remain executor and guardian until the child reaches age 21. Emily's breath caught. Her grandfather had left her everything. Land, stocks, accounts, all of it. She had inherited millions. Her heart pounded. Why didn't anyone tell me? I didn't know any of this. Holden sat down across from her and handed her another letter. This one handwritten, like the first. Emily, I always worried you'd end up trusting people who didn't deserve you. I saw it in your eyes. Your love for others, your need to prove yourself. But the world you married into doesn't care about hearts. It only respects power. I couldn't stop the pain, but I could leave you something they could never steal. This is yours. No one knows. Keep it that way. Not even your husband. Emily's hands shook as she lowered the letter. Tears blurred her vision. Mr. Holden cleared his throat. There's more. He opened a map and pointed at a marked area. See this land? It's been leased to a company without permission. We're looking into it. Based on the permits, the business behind it is Carter Development Group. Emily froze. Carter? She repeated. Yes, he said, as in Daniel Carter. Emily sat in Mr. Holden's study, stunned. The air felt heavy around her as she stared at the map. The land marked in red was hers, legally tied to her name, her grandfather's land, her daughter's future, and Daniel had no idea. He was building on it. Illegally. Are you sure it's his company? She asked quietly. Holden nodded. Positive. Carter Development Group filed for expansion into this area last year. But the land titles haven't cleared. They're using temporary permits. And your grandfather never signed off on any of them. But my name isn't even on anything yet, Emily said. No one told me. No one even knew I had a child. That's exactly why they're moving fast, he replied. They didn't think you'd show up. Probably assumed you were out of the picture. Emily looked down at Hope, asleep in her carrier beside the chair, her tiny chest rising and falling with peace and innocence. Daniel had discarded her like trash. Judith had erased her like she never existed. Vivian had stolen the life Emily thought she had. And now they were stealing from her child too. She returned to her apartment in silence. The bus ride was long. Her phone buzzed with another overdue bill notification. But her mind was somewhere else now, sharpening. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was theft, and Daniel was about to find out what it meant to burn the wrong woman. The next day, she went to the county records office. The clerk was polite, but surprised to see her. "Emily Brooks," he said, checking the system. "Oh, interesting. You're the listed beneficiary for parcel 49. A." Emily nodded. "I'd like certified copies of everything connected to it. Ownership, usage, any permits filed, especially recent ones." The man printed the records and handed them to her. She sat at a bench outside and read every word. Her name was there, listed under a family trust. The ownership was real, legal, and undisputed. But under land use requests, she saw something that made her stomach twist. Carter Development Group had applied for construction permits 6 months ago, right after Daniel began pulling away from her. The project name? Carter Villas, a legacy community. They were building luxury homes, on her land, under false pretenses. Emily sat frozen on the bench, the papers fluttering slightly in the wind. It all clicked together. The cruel timing, the sudden push for divorce, Vivian's smug confidence, Judith's determination to erase her. They had no idea she was the heir. They thought they were finally free of her. But they didn't know about the will, or the baby, or the land. And they definitely didn't know that Emily, broken, humiliated, and forgotten, was about to become their biggest problem. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Hope slept beside her, swaddled tightly. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional drip of the leaky bathroom faucet. She thought about everything they'd taken from her. Her reputation, her marriage, her dignity, but not her child, and not her future. The next morning she made her first move. She contacted a legal aid center and scheduled a consultation. She gathered every document, the will, the deed, the letters. She copied them, organized them, and placed them in a folder. She also called the local housing inspector's office and asked to file a report of unauthorized land use. "I need to report fraudulent development on a parcel I own," she said calmly. They asked her to come in with proof. She smiled. She had it. Meanwhile, Daniel and Vivian were appearing on magazine covers again. Power couple's new project, Carter Villas, to break ground this spring. Vivian Carter talks legacy, love, and moving on. Emily read every word with quiet fury. Vivian called herself an anchor in Daniel's stormy past. Judith was quoted saying, "Finally, the Carter name is in the right hands." Emily took screenshots of everything. They were handing her ammunition. 2 weeks later, she sat across from a young attorney named Jada, who had reviewed her documents. Jada leaned forward, eyes wide. "This is massive," she said. "They're in violation of land use law. If this goes to court, you could not only stop construction but sue for damages, and considering the scope of the project." Emily looked down. "What about my daughter?" Jada softened. "Hope is the legal heir. You're her guardian. Everything your grandfather left now belongs to her, through you, and no one can take it from us." Jada shook her head. "No, not unless you let them." Emily sat back. Her heart beat steady. For the first time in months, she felt something she thought she'd lost: control. Emily stood in front of the courthouse in a simple navy dress and flats. No designer bag, no jewelry. Her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. But inside that plain exterior, something was pulsing, cold, sharp, and unshakable. Purpose. The court clerk had already stamped her documents. Official claim of land inheritance. Cease and desist order against Carter Development Group. Intent to pursue legal action for unauthorized use of land, emotional distress, and defamation. For the first time in over a year, Emily had signed something that was hers. Not forced, not manipulated, not shoved onto her while in labor. This time she signed as someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't send a warning, no calls, no letters, just legal fire. A week later, Daniel received a notice of legal injunction, freezing his latest project indefinitely. Within days, investors were panicking. Contracts were paused. Media outlets began whispering about unconfirmed legal issues behind the Carter Villas project. Then came the headlines: Carter development tied to land ownership dispute. Air claims fraud. Unknown beneficiary halts luxury housing project. Carter Group silent. Daniel tried to call her. She didn't answer. Vivian emailed her directly. Subject: let's be adults. Emily, whatever this is, let's end it. This isn't good for anyone, especially not your daughter. Let's talk. Discreetly. I'm willing to help you walk away from this without embarrassment. You don't want to go up against us. You'll lose. Vivian Emily read it once, deleted it. But Vivian wasn't finished. 2 days later, she showed up, unannounced, outside Emily's building. She wore sunglasses and a scarf like some washed-up movie star trying not to be noticed. Emily opened the door to find her standing there. Vivian didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside, looked around the modest apartment, and scoffed. Still playing humble, she said. That's cute. Emily said nothing, just folded her arms. Vivian moved closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You think this little stunt makes you powerful? You'll never win against people like us. Crawl back to your little apartment and disappear. Emily smiled. Just a little. I won't lose, she said quietly. Vivian's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. You're desperate. You want revenge, I get it. But you have a baby. Think about her. Don't burn down her future just to hurt us. Emily looked at her daughter, peacefully sleeping in her bassinet. Then back at Vivian. I'm not burning her future, she said. I'm burning yours. Vivian didn't respond. She just left. Days later, Judith went on a radio show. I heard Emily's trying to claw her way back in, she said with a mocking laugh. Some women just don't know when they've been dismissed. Emily sat at home, listening, sipping tea. She didn't get angry anymore. She didn't cry. She collected it, every insult, every slight, like fuel. The court date was set, and she was ready. The courtroom was packed, press in the back, investors up front, curious onlookers buzzing quietly. Daniel walked in with his legal team, dressed in a tailored suit, jaw tight, eyes bloodshot. Vivian was beside him, lips thin, skin paler than usual. Emily entered quietly with her attorney Jada. She wore the same navy dress, but this time with heels. Hope stayed with a sitter. Today wasn't about emotion. It was about truth. Jada stood first, laying out the claim. Emily Brooks, sole heir to Henry Brooks's estate, proof of property ownership, including land now under illegal development. Medical records proving duress during divorce signing. Articles and statements used to publicly defame Emily. And finally, the will. The courtroom shifted. Daniel's attorney leaned over, whispering frantically. Emily sat still, watching him squirm. Then the judge asked her to speak. Emily stood. Her voice was steady, clear. My grandfather left me land that no one knew about. He protected it for me and for my daughter. That land was stolen by the man who vowed to protect us. He used my silence, my pain, and my name to build something for himself. While tearing me down in the media, she turned toward Daniel and Vivian. You took everything from me. And now, I'm taking back what was mine all along. Daniel stood frozen as the judge flipped through the documents. The room was silent except for the sound of turning pages. When the judge looked up, her expression was unreadable. I've reviewed the will. The land in question was lawfully passed to the plaintiff's child. All development activities by Carter Development Group are in direct violation of estate ownership rights. A sharp gasp echoed from the investors' row. Someone stood up and walked out. Another followed. Daniel's lawyer whispered frantically again, but Daniel didn't respond. He was still staring at Emily, like he was seeing her for the first time. Vivian gripped his arm. Her mask cracked. Do something, she hissed. Daniel stood slowly, adjusted his jacket and turned to Emily. "This doesn't have to go public," he said, his voice flat. "We can handle it privately, a settlement, quiet compensation. For the baby." Emily didn't blink. "Her name is Hope," she said. Daniel faltered. "Fine. Hope. You'll do nothing." Emily cut in, her voice razor sharp. "You'll watch it all fall." He opened his mouth to speak, but she kept going. "You destroyed my name. You used my child. You walked into a hospital room and threw divorce papers on a woman in labor. You laughed while I screamed through contractions. You humiliated me, erased me, and then stole from me." She turned to the judge. "I want full legal damages, public retraction of every false statement, and I want Carter Development dissolved. The land is not for sale. Ever." The judge nodded once. "Request granted." It hit like a hammer. Daniel slumped in his seat. Vivian looked like she'd been slapped. In the back, a reporter slipped out, already typing. Another investor grabbed his coat and followed, muttering, "We're done here." After court adjourned, Vivian rushed over as Emily collected her documents. She looked desperate, makeup cracked, voice shaky. "You're not really going to destroy everything, are you?" she whispered. "You said you loved us." Emily didn't even flinch. "I loved a lie," she said. "Now I'm just setting it on fire." Vivian grabbed her arm. "You don't have to do this. Please, you won." "Walk away," Emily pulled free. "I'm not walking away. I'm walking forward." Judith was waiting outside, surrounded by cameras. A reporter asked, "Mrs. Carter, any comment on your son's illegal development scandal?" Judith's smile faltered. "This is a misunderstanding. My son is a visionary. These claims are exaggerated." Emily stepped out, holding the court order in her hand. "No exaggeration," she said, handing a copy to the reporter. "Everything you need is in here." Judith's eyes widened. "You vile, petty little—" Emily stepped closer, calm, confident. "You backed the wrong woman." Then she walked down the courthouse steps, head high, heels clicking with every step, and didn't look back. 2 weeks later, Carter Development Group collapsed. Headlines flooded every platform. "Emily Carter files legal claim, brings down billion-dollar project. Vivian Hart vanishes after scandal. Judith Carter's public fall from grace, silent on her son's crimes." Daniel's assets were frozen. He lost his board seat, lawsuits stacked on lawsuits. Vivian disappeared from the spotlight. No farewell, no last post. Her name quietly removed from charity boards and influencer lists. Judith tried to spin the story, but no one listened anymore. She was cast out from the elite circles she once ruled. No one wanted to associate with the mother of a fallen fraud. Emily stayed quiet. She didn't gloat. She didn't post. She moved carefully, wisely, and with purpose. She took her settlement money and used it to buy back the Carter estate, the one Judith once said she'd never belong in. She didn't move in. She turned it into a women's shelter, a place for women like her, for the ones who were silenced, left, discarded, shamed. She called it the Hope House, named after her daughter. 1 year later, Emily stood in front of the old mansion, now painted soft white, with gardens blooming on all sides. Children laughed in the backyard. A woman sat on the porch, reading a book while her baby slept on her chest. Emily watched it all, holding hope in her arms. "She'll never know what you did to her," Emily whispered, looking up at the sky. "She'll only know what I built from it." Hope giggled and reached for a flower. Emily smiled. She wasn't broken anymore. She was reborn, not from vengeance, but from fire.